Welcome to Truth and Reckoning, a broadcast from CELDF. In this show, we'll learn from frontline organizers and communities fighting against environmental destruction. We'll explore different perspectives and innovative strategies for movement building, the potency and the potential of rights of nature, and effective action in defense of our communities. And we'll share inspiring stories of people working towards right relationship with the land and each other. I am your host, Max Wilbert. Joining me here today are Michelle Holman and Rob Dickinson from Community Rights Lane County. I've known both of you for many years now, so it's kind of fun for me to be sitting here and have a chance to have a conversation about your work there in Lane County. So I thought we would start with giving the audience just a general sense from each of you. You know, what's been your background of activism, advocacy work? You know, what were you involved in over the years? Mainly as sort of a setup of what brought you to be doing the work you guys have been doing for, over a decade now there in Lane County, which has been a different kind of organizing work, working closely with you guys, myself, trying to push the boundaries of how we make good change. But we all come from somewhere, right? We all have our experiences, and I think it's always good for people to understand, what brought us to this point, just sort of your origin stories in a way. So I don't know who wants to jump in first, but feel free, Michelle, feel free, Rob, either one of you.
Well, hey Kai, thanks for having us. It's good to be with you, and yeah, we've been working with you for over a decade, at least for me. So that's great. I'm Rob Dickinson. Joined Community Rights Lane County about 2014, and before that, like most of us, was involved in assorted single-issue activism. Civil liberties, environmental stuff, some labor stuff. And at some point, I guess I realized that was all good, but we weren't really solving any of the the structural issues. And then I spent a bunch of years working on electoral systems and the way we vote and the voting systems, with the idea that, well, maybe if we had better systems for voting and better electoral models, that we would make our democracy work better for us. And I still do believe that. And I worked on that for a long time and think that's really important. And in some ways, that sort of was really a good lead-in towards what got me involved with community rights in Lane County, was just realizing that we're all like playing whack-a-mole all the time, trying to stop all these projects that are not going to be stopped. You might stop them temporarily, but if the profit motive is still there, that eventually the industry is going to come right back and try to do it again. And the community rights model seemed to be a good way of at least trying to address some of the systemic structural issues. And so that's kind of what brought me to where I am now, working with Michelle and our great team here in Community Rights Lane County.
How about you, Michelle? Let's hear. You're brand new to activism, right?
Brand new. I just woke up this morning and got the itch. I think I really got my training wheels at UO in the early 70s during Vietnam. And probably I should go back even further. My parents were counterculturalists in Medford, Oregon. So we were a very unique family in Medford. Being Jewish was like being from another planet. So I feel like I grew up with open-minded people who saw injustice and kind of baked that into raising us kids. So then I left Medford. I went to Eugene to go to school. Vietnam was happening. I was instantly drawn into the activism of the times. UO was a completely different school than it is now. And there were a lot of kids like me who wanted to play a role. Then I left Eugene, moved out here to the country, and there was another kind of battle. The aerial herbicide spraying from helicopters that attends clear-cut logging was alive and well. And that's been going on for 50 plus years it's still going on. As much as we railed against it and did all the in the box kind of activism, we have not stopped it. But I know that I was really drawn into community rights because we weren't going to apologize or ask for permission. We were going to work for what we want. And it seems to me like, well, we haven't gotten that yet either. So our work is still cut out for us. There's no retirement until justice is won, and we can see where that's going. But we can also
So
see we
are you
can't
telling
give
me
up.
there's no community rights 401k waiting for all of us at the end?
Yeah, goddess, where I thought that's what had this meeting with Rob and me for. We could discuss our retirement.
Yeah. Just for context, Rob, you live in Cottage Grove, south there of Eugene, so kind of along the I-5 corridor there. And Michelle, you're up in the coastal mountains there in Deadwood. So you're kind of in two different zones, really, of a fairly large county there in Oregon. If you guys, one of you were to describe like Lane County for listeners, how would you kind of give people sort of a visual sense of the county?
Well, it goes from the coast into the foothills of the Cascades almost. So it's a big, big county with wide-ranging demographics. Eugene is the big city, but there's a lot of rural zones in Lane County. Where I am, we are an hour and a half from Eugene, an hour from Florence. The school is 45-minute bus ride for our kids. And then, Eugene is really where we do kind of base our work because that's where the vast electorate lives. And, we started Community Rights Lane County in 2012. It's a lifelong commitment.
I thought I'd start us kind of like bigger, and then we'll get more specifically into Community Rights Lane County, as you mentioned, Michelle, and get into the current Protect the Watersheds of Lane County effort that you guys are backing here. So we'll get into the specifics on kind of both those things. But I'm curious, obviously two very conscientious people, tracking the issues around you, not just locally, but nationally and globally, and not being afraid to get involved. Michelle, to your point around just getting involved during the Vietnam era and calling out the injustices going on there. I mean, as you think about either that era or other eras, and you look at today, what kind of goes around in your heads or in your conversations about the world at large or locally or whatever it may be, things that either scare you or frustrate you, or maybe things that have you excited or feeling empowered, or I don't know, where do you two sit at the moment if someone were to do like a litmus test? Are you one way or the other, middle of the road? How would you describe your sort of state of awareness of the world around you?
Strictly schizophrenic, I would say. So yeah, I mean, I think the worried, concerned is a big part, but then hopeful in some regards. But the worried, concerned is, I mean, you just see so many aspects of at least the environment under incredible threat. We live in an area with enormous resource extraction industries going on that are doing things that both harm the planet and then ultimately harm people. And then you see all kinds of threats to humans in terms of social justice and civil liberties and all that going on simultaneously. So and with corporate power being what it is, and corporations and industries having so much more power than people and communities, that's sort of really that has been at the essence of community rights, which is where communities are basically sacrifice zones so that corporations can make maximum profits. And whether it's extracting timber or that's more of a Lane County, Douglas County kind of thing locally, but there's other things in the rest of the country going on that are equally bad and which have different harms to people. And just not seeing a whole lot of traditional activism or what you'd say traditional environmentalism actually having any kind of effect on stopping that or slowing it down or protecting people and communities. So that's really what drives community rights, I think, is a way to try to protect our health and safety and welfare, and having a model that we think can do that.
Yep.
Michelle, I'm going to leave it for you to give us something optimistic.
Michelle, the optimist.
Right. Well, actually, while you're worrying, Rob, I'm pissed off, and anger has actually been my friend because it fuels my activism. You know, the whole righteous indignation, or I think it's John Trudell who says, "Don't trust anybody who isn't angry." You know, there's a lot of reasons to be angry, and anger itself, if you just sit in it, is destructive. But if it propels you to continue, I mean, then it's a blessing. So, yeah, I'm angry on the daily, and I'm disappointed in my fellow humans. I mean, I'm disappointed in myself for not being more, but you know, I'm in it to win it, and I think that as long as we don't give up, we have a fighting chance. You know, we know what's wrong. We know what it would look like to. We can envision a world where everybody gets what they need and the planet is not suffering. And as soon as we figure out how to connect the dots and get us there, then our work will be done. But you know, I've often said there's job security in being an unpaid volunteer, railing against the system.
I guess within that, Michelle, and also with things that you said earlier about, you know, advocating for what you want and attempting to take it, right? Not waiting for that permission, which also kind of, to me, works into, Rob, what you mentioned about sort of the disappointment of conventional organizing or conventional activism, or sort of the conventional models or platforms, or the quote unquote right places to be, right, to do the work or to be heard, right? That we're always told we just want to be heard, and I taking from you, Michelle, like, no, like, we don't want to be heard. We want a different world than you are shoving down our throats here. I guess within that, like, what has felt like either now in this era or a different era? I mean, do you think part of the problem is that people are just too obedient? They're just too much allegiance to the system for one reason or the other? And if that's an impediment or a barrier, you know, what is it going to take, you know, to get people to be more disobedient? Or to your quote, you know, Michelle, you know, if you know, meet someone, don't trust them unless they're angry, sort of thing. It sort of feels like that same thing, right? Like those people who have that sense about them are usually the people who aren't just going to fall in line because they're told so, which is largely how the system seems to want to operate, especially, Rob, as you mentioned, you know, the corporate system is very good at that. So, I mean, how have you guys sort of dealt with that sort of sense of obedience and the disobedience, that kind of tension between the two?
I'm going to say that not only are people unwilling to take risks in general, but I think people are still too comfortable, you know, and they find ways to justify, well, that's happening over there, but really me and my little world, I'm just going to take care of me. And I got enough, and I got internet, and I can watch all the entertainment I want on my computer, and I can still go to concerts, and I can still put gas in my car. And, you know, I think it's just that kind of complacency comes from privilege. And I know a lot of privileged people who are activists and have somehow switched over and said, nope, I got to play my role. I got to do something. I don't know what it is necessarily. And those folks are fodder for our work, you know. Well, you don't know what to do. Come on over here and help us figure out what to do. You know, we know what Nirvana land looks like. We know what we need to push forward. We're looking really very strongly into how do we build more capacity as an organization, because we're still rebuilding from COVID, like a lot of groups. So our numbers are down, but there are people who get it. And I don't know if it was you, Kai, in 2012 when I first got involved, but some brilliant mind said, it's not going to take everyone. It takes enough. It takes enough people, but we don't have to get everyone on board. So we're trying to unseat people from their complacency and their comfort and their privilege. That's a hard sell. And another thing someone told me back then is you can't sell this stuff. People have to come to community rights work authentically and feel like, okay, yes, we don't live in a democracy. We need to create democracy. We're not going to. The system is not broken. It's fixed in deference to corporate and governmental connection and bedroom. So it's. I think it's just people aren't hurting enough, and the people who are hurting, who really get it, don't really have the bandwidth to take it on as a volunteer. So I don't know. One foot in front of the other. We get people interested, and the more people that we align with that are seeing the situation for what it really is,
Yeah.
and looking through those lenses, those are the folks that are going to help us make change.
I was going to slide in real quick, Rob, just because I think it's an important point that Michelle just made that I know that you guys have been strong advocates for. That a lot of the work that we've all been involved in is largely a lot of truth telling, right? And within that myth busting. And so this idea that the system is broken versus what Michelle just said, that the system is fixed and we've got to break it, which really, moves right into that disobedience aspect, right? If you've got a fixed system that has so many elements of injustice and privilege in a way that has harm caused to people in place, then you're obligated to confront it. If you're someone who's conscious and seeing it and just understands it. But I think that's a big piece, right? People they're not understanding that the system is fixed to work a certain way, right? That the system's been very good at creating this sort of camouflage or mirage that it's serving us in a good way at everything it does, right? And of course, those of you there in Lane County have understood firsthand that it really hasn't been, especially Michelle, you living in really the industrial sacrifice zone. You've seen it for decades that's not true. And so it's such a battle, right, as a small ragtag group trying to build the awareness and then build the motivation and build the action to actually confront a very well fortified system. On the other side, you can see why obedience happens, right? Because people are like, well, why bother? It's too big of a challenge. So I don't know, Rob, what have you thought over the years as just a general activist and one that's been engaged in this work now for a number of years?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. I just wanted to follow on a little bit of what Michelle said. I think I wouldn't disagree with anything Michelle said. I think that she's right, that maybe we are all too complacent and definitely too comfortable. I think, and that's certainly a part of it, but I think the other part is that I think people have lost faith that the democratic system that they all know is actually going to address their needs, is going to respond to what's hurting them. And so then I think people tune out. I think that it's not just that they're complacent and comfortable, but they just don't see how we're going to make progress. And so I think that in some ways this could be hopeful when we get a little bit of momentum, when there are victories. I think people are really looking for places to plug in and do something that they think would be effective. So when people see a model that they think could work, I think people don't want to just sit at home. They just don't feel like showing up and voting is going to do it, because they've been doing that for forever. I mean, I've participated in every election there's ever an opportunity for me, but I don't feel like it's really done that much for the things I care about. And when you see signs of progress, or when you see small victories, or when you see a small group stand up to big challenges and succeed, people will jump on that. I mean, I think just looking at Lincoln County, where just a ragtag group of a handful of people was able to sort of pass a ballot measure to ban aerial spraying, when they were outspent literally 1,000 to 1. I mean, and they still were able to win at the ballot box. That's a kind of an example of people seeing an opportunity and showing up. And yeah, that still got overturned, and that's a tough battle, and the system is rigged. But I think that if we were able to show people a model that would actually address their wants and needs, I think people would show up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good setup for what Michelle mentioned earlier. You and I, Michelle, met, I think it was in the fall of 2012, if I'm not wrong. So, we're creeping up on 13 years, and CELDF did a democracy school there, and you and others had attended, and then, in short order, I think there was maybe 5 people initially who gathered to say, hey, what could we do differently here? That was a time when a lot of, obviously the industrial forest violence had been going on for decades and still is, but it was also a time when there was a lot of mobilization around calling out and questioning and trying to stop the expansion of genetically modified, seeds in that whole industry there. And so that was a lot of kind of the energy going at that time back in 2012. I don't know if you've thought about it, Michelle, or if you've been interviewed before and asked, but what do you think brought you all together? I know a couple of you knew each other from some kind of conventional activism work, but was there a certain something in the moment there, or just fate, or what do you think? What do you think that it was that sort of brought people together to sort of initially kind of talk and think differently about how do we contend with this fixed system?
We were genuinely excited to take matters into our own hands. We were tired of asking permission. Please stop spraying us. Please stop poisoning us. Whether it was corporate heads or governmental officials, electeds or regulatory agencies, people, we were just tired of being told no. It's legal. Yeah, we know it's legal, but that doesn't make it right. And we saw the injustice, and we were like, well, screw it. We're going to do it ourselves. We're going to take matters into our own hands. We're tired of being put off by that rationale that it's legal. That didn't deter us. We knew it was well-settled law. We didn't care. It was time to change the law. So it was exciting to think, perhaps a little naively at the time, that we were going to write a law and then it would be enforced. We'd pass it and be enforced. And the corporate boys would go gently into that good night and it would all be over. And then we'd take on the next set of issues, which are many. There's all the social justice and the worker rights, and there's just so many other things that are wrong, and we see they're wrong and we want to make them right. So just putting it in our own laps and empowering ourselves that way, and then talking to other neighbors who, we're like, hey, want to join us? We're taking this on. We're not experts. We're just people who live in the community who want to steward the place where we live. That brought us together, and it's kept us together. I mean, really, we have really not seen a whole lot of victory, except that we haven't given up because we know that we're fighting for what's right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that confidence piece is huge. I mean, I tried to talk about that often, and it's thin at the same time, right? Just be confident, it'll happen. But I think that is an important piece that's often missed, right? Because everyone's trying to devise the way or the tactic. But if you're not feeling motivated by it, if you're not angry, as Trudell said, which to me is part of it, is there's this confidence element that has to be there. And you guys have you've definitely showed that over the years, and it's been difficult. Those 5 people came together. You started Community Rights Lane County. You worked on one initiative and the next and the next and the next. You've gotten hammered in the courts. You've been hammered by your elected officials. You've been hammered by the corporate industry. You've been hammered by your own fellow activists at times. Yeah. It's been a lot of punches that you've taken over the last 13 years. And I think an amazing aspect of what needs to be understood by listeners is that, to your point, you're not stopping. I mean, in some ways you've come to understand, maybe after that kind of newness, that you got a new dose of why the system is the way it is, or maybe more than you maybe understood. And so much of that hasn't changed, right? It is what it still is. And that analysis, I think, still holds. And, it was about finding ways to sort of have that confidence to build up the possibility to then increase the probability that we could have the transformation that we need to have here. And just like any efforts that are going up against big systems, you try different things to kind of crack things open. And, I guess how have you guys kept your core group sort of going in those sort of face of what most people would say defeats? In fact, a lot of people would say, well, why are you doing this again? Or, just go home, or you tried, good job, well done, thank you, but, let the others have a chance, or whatever it is that they might be thinking. But, that hasn't been the case despite everything that's been thrown your way. Like, what has it been, or how have you been able to kind of not just keep things going, but in my observation, grow things and have the impact despite the initial or the motivating thing of getting these new laws passed, thwarting you to date?
Well, I mean, one, if you look at any of the historic struggles over time, any of the civil rights struggles or suffrage, those didn't happen in a dozen years, right? If people had just given up after the first decade or little bit of trying, then where would we be? So, one, I guess, if it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting hard for a long time. And really, what is the alternative? I mean, do we, if you give up, then things stay the same or get worse. And so what other choice do we have but to keep doing what we're doing?
I have a friend who she's famous for saying, "Don't act like you don't know what you know." Like, we know what we know. We believe in that injustice needs to be challenged. That we can't just go back just because we've been slapped upside the head this time and that time. It doesn't change the fact that people suffer. The earth is suffering, and who's gonna speak for the folks who can't speak, or the river that can't speak? It's going to be people of conscience. It's people who know what we know. We're not seeing the changes. That doesn't change what we know has to change. I mean, we owe it to our kids and to our grandkids and their grandkids to just don't give up until we get what we want. And we're not Pollyannas. We know that many of us will go on to the next life and pass the baton on to others. But that is our job. I've heard people say, well, leave it to the kids. I'm done. Hey, you're not done. Did you get what you want? Has justice been served? No. We got to stay in. We got to walk hand in hand with the generations that are here now, willing to fight and challenge. In some ways, I think the heightened mania that is our U.S. system right now is a gift to us. I mean, as much suffering is going on, and apparently it takes a lot of suffering to unseat people. I don't know. But in some ways, I see active.
You're finding like opportunity in sort of the craziness that's going on? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or?
That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing people that were unwilling to interject themselves now are involved more so. I mean, even in my own little community here, it's not community rights, but there's far more mutual aid occurring here. We're now, all the gardeners out here are growing a row for those in the valley who can't grow food. There's communication systems being set up that are not, they're not your mainstream communications. They're more, people kind of guerrilla communication, if you will. But there's.
Do you think people are? Do you think people are kind of here? I know you guys have been, for year after year after year through different means trying to explain to people that there's a structural reality. It's the system, that fixed system that you referred to earlier. Do you think people are getting that more? That it's not just, this administration or that administration or this elected or that elected. Like, are people seeing that more or understanding that more in your view? I mean, you just described, Michelle, that there are people engaged in really community self-reliance, which is a lot of what you guys have been trying to teach, right? Like we need the ability to decide what happens where we're at. And if you're not gonna provide that for us, we're going to take that, right? And if it manifests in the form of producing food or developing a new communication system, to me, that what I hear is that's a form of both resistance and resilience taking place simultaneously because the system has failed them. And in a lot of ways, the system has never been there to provide that anyway, in large degree. But
Right.
Yeah, Kai, I think you're right. I think more people are becoming aware that the system isn't working for them, or was designed never to work for them. I think that people are more aware than ever about the influence of sort of corporate power on all the decisions that get made in our country. And I think as people lose confidence in sort of the bigger picture systems like the national things at the national or even state level, they're probably going to be more likely to focus in on their communities or think that they have some greater impact in at the smaller scale in their communities than they would in at the federal level, for example.
I mean, that's, you guys have done that over the years, right? So you had initiatives about changing the dynamic of what agriculture is supposed to be like in Lane County, right? Which was also about keeping out things that would harm it, like GMOs. You focused on another initiative on the aerial spray of pesticides, and that chemical warfare that's been ongoing for decades now in the timber industry. You had initiatives that spoke to this idea of local self-governance, that, unless we have the ability to really act as a democracy, what do we have? We have a totalitarian type system that's dictating from the top down, that's just painted with a different lovely face on it or good marketing. But the reality is people are making decisions that are impacting us very often in a negative way, despite maybe good decisions happening from the top down that are positively impacting us. And so you had that initiative, those made it a certain distance, but never really got in front of the people that it should have gotten in front of, which was the voters of Lane County. The corporations interfered, the government interfered, the courts interfered. But as you said, that hasn't stopped you. So you have this new initiatives about protecting your watersheds there in Lane County, and you have that under your kind of political arm here, the Protect Lane County Watersheds group that's been working very hard to gather those initiative signatures and get that question, that idea on the ballot again for the proper audience, which is the voters of the county. Give us a sense of, where did this come from? What is it? What's your aim? Like, what's the status? Anything you want to throw in there about what's happening with that effort currently would be great for the listeners to hear.
I want to give that to Rob, but because Rob is really our go-to guy with the initiative understanding. But I do want to just make a point about all those losses that we have endured when we've tried to stop GMOs, we've tried to stop the spray. Those are just because we didn't win those battles doesn't mean we didn't win some modicum of education in our community, because every time we lost, it was another object lesson. You see, this system, we're playing by the rules, we're trying really hard, we're doing everything right, and the system won't let us in. I mean, we the people legislate through the initiative system in Oregon. Why can't we get this before the voters? Doesn't that piss you off? So I think that we use those situations to hammer home the point that the system is really a rough place to try to advocate for yourself. We're at it again, but we've learned some stuff in our time with those other two initiatives. Rob, tell them about what we're doing now.
Sure, and let me just follow on what you were just saying about the failure of the system. I mean, if you think about, like, one of the issues we worked on a lot was aerial spraying. It should seem obvious that industry shouldn't be able to spray poisons from helicopters and make people sick. I mean, even in Eugene, people don't even realize that's happening, and when they learn that's happening, they're just almost can't even believe you, because it doesn't seem like that we should live in a country where that's possible, but we do. But then, you said it's been going on for 50 years, and you just wonder, well, why? I'm gonna let this train go by, because I don't think you want that.
Well, yeah, we could hold there for a second, and I don't know if Michelle, if you've got other other just kind of thoughts on what you were just saying earlier about, we always, often in this work, right, people want to define things as losses, but we look them as really just redefining that it's a different kind of win, right? And so
Yep.
to me, that's about that taking taking ownership in a way that you don't ask for permission for, or you don't listen to the naysayers, because it is largely about unrolling, sometimes very slowly, the realities of the game. And you guys, I think, have been very good about exposing how the game is set up, who the game benefits. And for those that want to, quote unquote, join the game, like you guys have been doing, what happens when you challenge those who control the game? They find ways to get rid of you and to silence you. And so, again, that fact that you keep showing up, I think, is been part of the organizing and activism work there. And for a lot of conventional folks, they would just shake their head and, go on to the next thing. And here's the next thing I'll back. And here's the next thing I'll back. And, you guys definitely are rooted in this idea that it's a systems problem. And part of that rotten system manifests then these issues that we have to contend with, whether it's, social justice issues or economic issues or the environmental issues, which is, largely, I guess, what you guys have advocated for through the initiatives under that sort of banner of environmental, even though we know that it impacts all these other things. And so I think that's to be commended, and that's not very often what people get to hear about, because of, even to your point earlier, Michelle, about communications, just think about media, how much media is out there that doesn't cover the kinds of realities that you guys are involved with and working towards. And you have to find your own ways to be heard. And it's not easy in this day and age.
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit of an overview of our watershed initiative.
Yeah, please.
Basically, the idea is it's one about educating the community about the importance of watersheds, about how important our watersheds and clean water are both to the ecosystems, in Lane County, and also to our communities and to people in Lane County, and also what the threats are to the watersheds in terms of, in particular, corporate activities that create harm. So, we've talked a little bit about aerial spraying, but that, when that happens as part of clear-cut logging, there are, nasty chemicals that basically are going to run off into the rivers and streams and also into our drinking water. And it also, it's a rights of nature based initiative. So basically asserting that nature doesn't exist just for our human benefit or for the profits of industry, but it has rights to exist and flourish of its own. And I think that's an important sort of new concept that people really do appreciate. And it also, like all community rights legislation, it asserts the rights that we as residents and people have, and that we have a right to clean water, for example. And then it also, like any good measure, it basically sort of prohibits activities that are going to destroy those rights or to take them away. So like any kind of corporate activities that, say, pollute the watersheds or pollute our water, those are not allowed under our initiative. And it also has mechanisms to stop those harmful activities or to have penalties for companies that continue to pollute after that has been called out. So and some protections for people who whistleblowers and things of that nature. So that's the general idea. It's a rights-based initiative that would recognize the importance of our watersheds and create protections for them.
So it sounds like, you talked a lot, Rob, earlier just about sort of the corporate power, and the impacts that it has. I've always had this sort of relationship with the rights of nature that it's meant to kind of help us get into right relationship. We've got to be in better relationship with the things that actually provide life, right? And it's just insane that we destroy the very life forces that sustain us and everything around us. And so I like that you said it's about some activity, right? Because we need resources. We live from nature, we live in nature, we live with nature, and we live as nature. We are nature. So it is a world of insanity right now, and I think efforts like yours are about trying to bring in sanity into an insane world. It's not
Yeah.
radical. It's common sense, and we're living in a very, I don't know if it was you that said it, Rob, but it's sort of a maniacal world right now, and so this is about bringing, levity and common sense and relationship and just symbiosis, right?
Yeah.
It's insane. What's insane to me is it's it's been left largely to a group like yours to put these questions out there, and of course people were like, well, why aren't elected officials or why aren't this group sort of picking up on it? But that just shows the power of the existing system to kind of contain and control and manipulate those that you think would be the advocates. So yeah, it's still a fairly small
Yeah.
group that's trying to bring sanity into a very crazy world.
Yeah. But I mean, the rights of nature is really interesting in that maybe a decade ago, we would have probably thought people would think it's just crazy to even, talk about that as a concept. But I think the world has changed a lot. And not only has the rights of nature probably in the last 15 years really sort of exploded in terms of global attention and global interest and activity, in various countries around the world and communities, in the United States as well, the Lake Erie Bill of Rights and, Ecuador, Bolivia, and India, New Zealand, all over the place, has that idea sort of really gotten out there. But I think we were talking about this earlier about people losing confidence in existing sort of environmental laws and environmental activism. And I think this idea of the rights of nature, people really see it as something new and something hopeful and something different. When you can light your tap water on fire, that's probably a sign you might want to try something new. Um,
That's a different
so
way to get hot drinks, right? Um, but
Right.
I mean, Michelle, you kind of brought it up. It sounds like there's, beyond the important work that you guys have been doing through using the initiative process, and I know we've had discussions just about sort of what's next kind of on the horizon, but you talk about people really maybe upping kind of the mutual aid mentality around food and other things, this idea that we've got to be conscious about communications, whether it's from a security standpoint or just getting information to one another for the sake of having healthy community. I mean, are you guys seeing either more of that just around you within Lane County, let's say, or are those things that your group, Community Rights Lane County, has also been sort of thinking about, like what's next? I mean, to your point, Michelle, like it's not over till it's over. We're unfortunately still far from it. And if our methods of getting people mobilized and our methods of drawing people attention to either issues or the system itself, if those methods like the initiative process have become so unwieldy and to some level maybe edging on a point of not being the potential being kind of gone from where they were initially were, just through all the things that you guys gone through. Like, I guess, what are you seeing potentially happening either through your own organized intentional work or that's already happening around you that you find to be hopeful, let's say, in that realm of resistance and resilience?
Yeah, I think that what I'm seeing that's positive is that there are people looking at their own little locations. There's some really cool stuff going on in Portland, in the big city. People buying houses and making sure that those houses get to people who need the house. That's mutual aid. But I think really foundational to all of this work is the acknowledgement, and people are starting to get it, that we have never lived in a true democracy where people get to make decisions about where they live and what's going to happen, what kind of corporate presence is going to be allowed to do whatever it is they feel like they can do, and they can because they do have the law behind them. I think the notion, the initiative system, while in its inception, was a great gift to the people that we really. I mean, we shouldn't have to be grateful for this gift. It's just this is how we do our thing. So many obstacles have been put in place since the people actually started using the initiative system. So I do see it being a more difficult route, especially to make the kind of changes we want. If you want to the initiative system still is the friend to the people that are not really pushing hard on the system.
Yeah.
If you want to push hard on the system, I've got my doubts.
That's pretty funny, right? So here was, the populist move to sort of put in place methods of trying democracy, to your point, right? And then a lot of it just sort of sat there, right? And then people started to actually use it, and lo and behold, those in power were like, maybe this isn't such a good thing. And of course, what you face there in Oregon is happened in other states with the initiative process as well, whether it's at the local or state level, as people have put, again, what I would say very commonsensical ideas forward, but those commonsensical ideas have been a threat to the power dynamic as it currently stands. They've found ways to make it, more and more difficult to nearly impossible, to use those tools of democratic rights. But that's the way it goes, right? I mean, to your point, Rob, earlier where you talked about other movements, anytime people really mobilize to push and push hard and push diligently and with that confidence, there's repercussions. And sometimes the repercussions, of course, have been loss of life. And just other means of the system punishing you, whether it's new laws or blackballing you or, trying to ostracize you. I mean, that's just the lay of the land, right? And I think that's another thing for people to understand and maybe hear from you guys. It's like, yep, we're pushing the right buttons. I mean, if they're coming after us, I hope you guys take that as sort of a badge of honor in a way, more so than feeling defeated by it.
No, absolutely. I would say that's 100% why our group is still together. We've been at this a long time, and we acknowledge just that we must be doing something right because we're pissing off the people that are messing with our earth and our human rights.
Anything else you guys want to bring in, either around the Protect Lane County Watersheds effort or aspects of Community Rights Lane County or other things that we just didn't cover in our conversation here that you want to say?
Well, I guess, my concern and my inner dialogue is about taking greater risks to get what we know we need to feel like we're responsible, inhabitants of this planet. And our group has been pretty safe. We've been writing initiatives and trotting them out and being rule followers. We have to be to get it on the ballot, right? But I just wonder, we ask ourselves, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? I mean, we're so there. We're so past there, what it's going to take. It's not bad enough that you're not going to risk something else. And so I think the conversations that we're having are more along those lines of like, well, why not us? Why wouldn't we be the ones to take the risks? We don't act like you don't know what you know. So those are the conversations we're having now. We are seeing this initiative process to its logical conclusion or illogical conclusion. We will likely be on the ballot in May of 2026. We're planning a really kickoff campaign party with a really fun band in Eugene, Soul Vibrator, and we finally just got the date and the venue, and it's going to be really fun. We have so much support from the band and from the host of the space. So that's November 15th. We're going to have a big party and thank the community for support and give them something else to do. So, we're just going to continue. We just lost our Rob.
No,
he was having some.
Yeah,
he was having some issues. But along with this struggle, our group is so much fun, and we keep humor at the forefront. We laugh together all the time while we're doing this intense, ridiculous climb up this tall peak of a mountain.
Yeah.
Called trying to create democracy. But, we want people to join us.
Yeah. No, I think there's two things there that I think are really important. I'm glad you were willing to share. Just the last point around, the power of humor. You got to have that levity, and you got to laugh. You got to, otherwise, the pressure, the stress of it all will just crush you. And I also appreciate just kind of your own inner dialogue, but also your group sort of inner dialogue about how far am I willing to go. And I think that's an important thing for people to hear, right? Because it is wherever you're at, right? Lane County, you're in Texas, you're in Maine somewhere, you're in a community in in southern Arizona. I mean, there is definitely pressures. There's definitely something happening in your neighborhood, in your community. And so then it's, what am I going to do? And of course it's the normal, like, who do I go? Who do I talk to? And it's the same things that you guys went through as well, like to understand that, well, in the end, there's really nobody but us. And so then the question is, how far? And then within that, of course, the intention that goes with that, the training that should go with that, the organizing, the strategic thinking. So there's more, but there's that kind of threshold to cross to say, this is necessary and this needs to happen now. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people are thinking about. And I think hearing just the fact that you guys have been at it for as long as you have, to have that same kind of questioning, I think it's important. I think it's another thing that I hope builds confidence with when people listen to this episode.
Yeah, I got disconnected for a minute, but and so I'm not sure exactly what I missed, but I know you were looking for some closing thoughts, and so a couple of things. One is I'm sure there will be people in Lane County that'll hear this, and hopefully they will realize that even just we're a small group, and even just a couple of additional volunteers, supporters, people working with us actually would make a big difference to our effort. And then, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to listen to this who aren't in our area, but who may not have a community rights ballot measure going on there, or may not have any kind of activism like what we're doing in their community. But, we could sure use any kind of help. We're basically going to be entering a campaign season against at least the most powerful industries in Oregon with relatively, basically a treasury of almost nothing, and they would be willing to, a couple $1 million were spent in teeny tiny Lincoln County, and Lane County, the industry would spend, unlimited funds to defeat us. So if anybody wants to help us out, there's lots of ways of doing that, and one of them, unfortunately, is just, clicking the donate button and sending something our way, because we could use people, we could use dollars, we could use all kinds of help.
Yep. I like viewers or listeners won't be able to see this, but behind you, Rob, there's a box that says "This box contains magic." So I think that's maybe some magic. Maybe some magic will help as well. But yeah, so protect Lane County, Watersheds.org, and then community rights lanecounty.org are two places, obviously, where people can go to and get more information, get connected. But yeah, no, it's been a while since we've seen each other in person, but really appreciate you guys. You're not just guests on this program. You're obviously friends and comrades for a long time here. So I've been talking with Rob Dickinson and Michelle Holman from Community Rights Lane County and Protect Lane County Watersheds.org effort. So thank you guys, and I just amazed by your diligence and dedication. I mean, it's pretty awe-inspiring.
Thanks, guys. Been fun hanging out, and
Thanks, Rob.
you've been there with us all along the way. So thanks for that.
I want to thank you for listening to our show and let you know a few ways you can support Truth and Reckoning. First, share this broadcast with your friends and family. Leave a positive review via your podcast app. Visit the Truth and Reckoning YouTube channel and leave a thumbs up and a comment. The full scope of the work of CELDF, including this show, comes with a financial cost. So if you're able to make a donation, go to CELDF.org. That's CELDF.org. But most importantly, our goal for this show is to empower you to take action. So the best way you can show your support is to get involved with your community and protecting the place where you live. Thank you very much.